Hello and welcome. I'm Martyn Jones at goodstrat.com, the Good Strategy Company. And today I want to talk to you about something I like to call deep learning and shallow understanding. In spite of, or perhaps because of the many years I worked in artificial intelligence, I believe that the current long-distance love affair with AI and what is also euphemistically termed deep learning to be somewhat irrational in its exuberance. In the 80s, I was experimenting with automatic feature extraction, pattern recognition, and parallel distributed processing, building on the work of Rummel McClelland and the PDP research group, which led me to adaptive neural networks. As a result, my research and development in this field showed me that automatically mining nuggets of gold or automatically gaining real insight from data is not easy, far from stable, and frequently not achievable. Interesting experiments indeed, but frequently impractical in a business setting. Back in the day, I was interested in examples of possibilities in this technology space, and in trying to design, train, and productize neural networks. At Unisys, we started out by doing things such as refining the predictability that a person will be a member of the Sharks or the Jets. I can't remember now if they were New York gangs or gangs from Los Angeles, and applying that in divining the credit risks of individuals and businesses. Elsewhere, we were creating simple applications for handwritten number recognition and a bit more sophisticated basic document recognition. During this time, I also had the pleasure and privilege of addressing a European IEEE conference on neural networks in Nice, which allowed me to discuss some of our work at the European Centre for AI and Advanced Information Technologies in Madrid, where I had the good fortune to be working on the bleeding edge of AI and advanced database technologies, both software and hardware. In those days, Unisys, formed from the merger of Sperry and Burroughs, was the go-to IT company for engineers, designers, and computer scientists. My boss at Sperry and later Unisys gave me license to research, design, and build proof-of-concept prototypes in a number of areas, including complex and massively scalable distributed database management, the development of an integrated 4GL and expert system development and delivery environment, which involved extending a fourth-generation language product called Mapper, a heterogenic cross-platform database query management application, an initiative designed for the European Union, and smaller proof-of-concepts in AI and data mining, a younger and less socialized version of the deep learning of today. But what I want to talk about in particular was my work in the area of AI and data mining. The goal I set myself in this area was to find ways of extracting real business-oriented rules from the data mining process and to be able to apply and explain rule-based lines of reasoning in a way that a subject matter expert could understand, test, and lend credibility to. Also, keep in mind that the ability for AI technology to produce explanations of lines of reasoning was an absolute necessity back in the day, which was reasonable but extraordinary, because not so long ago we didn't even expect any sort of rational line of reasoning explanations from many experts. So, what of it? If we remove statistics from the scenario, the automatic recognition of patterns in databases and naive learning, whilst having interesting pasts, a fuzzy and nuanced present, and an uncertain future, are terrains plagued with shallow and imprecise understanding, exaggeration, and make-believe, which makes any real and meaningful understanding quite problematic. The fact of the matter is that there is plenty of visionary noise surrounding deep learning and AI, but very little in terms of concrete strategies to address truly significant challenges using this technology. There is also a lot of speculative fantasy about the promise of AI, but very little in terms of coherent and tangible answers to the absolutely fundamental question of to what ends. On top of that, there hasn't been an entirely satisfactory explanation given as to why we would place much trust in technology that can't even explain itself. Is the computer says no really good enough? Now I want to look at the lessons of the past, the realities of the present, and the promises of the future. In over 6 decades, AI has seen a few peaks of hype followed by prolonged troughs of incredulity, disappointment and recrimination. Indeed, history has shown us that much of the promise of AI comes unstuck when immature, unsound or unproven technology is taken to market too soon and without a reasonable understanding of its applicability. AI also falls into disrepute when companies embrace and spend significant time and effort in trying to exploit things they don't comprehend in order to achieve outcomes they can't define in terms of tangible revenue improvements, value accrual, asset monetization or cost-saving benefits. In short, this is because interesting experiments in AI are brought out of academia far too soon, hyped to the heavens and eagerly acquired, if not ultimately used, by commercial IT. The fact is that IT companies, and more recently IT service companies, have unwittingly killed AI time and time again through their own irrational exuberance and bringing into question more than just the technology. Add to this the issue of hyperbole and AI. There is no end to the number of charlatans waiting in the wings, willing to big up, to boost the latest tech trends. But when things go pear-shaped, it's the business cultures who will seek to destroy something that promised to deliver so much, yet failed to deliver anything much beyond liabilities, costs, and wasted opportunities. In the 80s, one of my major projects in AI was to design and integrate an expert system development and delivery capability into my company's flagship 4GL product, Mapper, now known as Unisys BIS. It was a rule-based system offering backward, forward and hybrid processing. It worked well, but one of the major limitations of all expert system shells at that time was the ability to manage and maintain large rule sets. It is the first time I realized that without adequate tools to manage complexity, then business and technology risk exposure would become issues. As a result, I tried to identify ways to simplify the tools without, of course, losing intrinsic value by providing suitable tools to help to greatly reduce the perception of complexity as well as the complexity itself. Around that time, I also had a project to address a classification challenge, and for this I decided to look at data mining again. Using small training datasets, we initially had some interesting results, but then what happened was that we noticed that when we increased the size of the datasets, that learning became skewed and not in a good way. So we pondered the problem and decided that we weren't getting the right answers because we weren't using enough data, so our inability to feed the network appropriately was producing undesirable outcomes. That's when we hit a brick wall. We then threw tons of data at the neural network, so much so the neural network was incapable of discriminating or discerning anything at all. We had created a narrow and shallow idiot savant and trained it so well that it eventually knew nothing. I mentioned some of these work-related anecdotes to my colleagues at IBM's Global Data Mining Centre in Dublin. To my surprise, they had stumbled upon exactly the same issues and had tried to resolve them in exactly the same way, to no avail. Another project I was involved in was at a major investment bank. The purpose was to build an artificial trader. To achieve this, it was decided to capture as rules the expertise of expert traders and to combine the evaluation and execution of these rules with networks trained by the data mining of price curves and historic trading data in order to build a functioning artificial trader. When the application was eventually trialed, 3 observations were made. The AI trader performed marginally better than the real expert trader. The real trader came a close second, and when the trader worked with the artificial trader, the outcomes were far worse than when the trader worked alone. Also, there was the belief that the trader performed less well because of the active benchmarking against the machine. The more things changed, the more they stayed the same, as each new generation of techno-babbler tries to reinvent the wheel, whether it is needed or not, whilst astutely ignoring the sage advice of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What we see again and again is an ingrained inability to learn from the past and to apply what we've learned in evaluating the present. This seems to be a constant in the evolution of humankind, made more obvious by way of the uses and abuses of technology, crass hyperbole, and critical thinking avoidance. So what are the realities of the present? Let's address a few of them. People are either afraid of complexity and prefer not to see it, or embrace it without really understanding the implications. The complexity of significant challenges is being ignored, and so is the complexity and risks of technological and process options. People don't know how to disambiguate or deconstruct complexity. In short, people don't know how to consume the elephant. And in my experience, people who do know aren't that much appreciated either. There is no alignment of the imagination and the practical. People, in general, don't know how to successfully simplify the complex. And those who do know are treated like clowns, fools, or pariah. Also, people are willingly and uncritically embracing techno-fad dogma. The visibility and audibility of techno-fad slogans have gone beyond the sloganizing used in tractor factories in the communist era. It is a painful fact of life that best engineering principles are treated in the business IT world as just so much academic theory. The other dopey generalization doing the rounds is that more data means better data. More data doesn't mean better data. It's a dopey generalization without any reasonable theoretical or practical underpinnings. The data is the new oil. Try telling that to your car. No, data is not like oil. Electricity is the new oil. Another dopey generalization being pushed by IT strongly within business is that reasonable explanation is not a thing. If a machine is being used to produce recommendations for anything that requires duty of care, then they must also be able to produce a reasonable, accurate and verifiable line of reasoning at the same time. Also, legal and compliance issues are also important considerations. Another sloppy notion doing the rounds these days is that a data scientist can do the job of a qualified statistician. I've only one thing to say about this. Without a grounding in statistics, a data scientist is at best a data lab assistant, and more than likely a bloody liability. Here's another gem from Techno's Room 101. It isn't important to know what it is, just use it. My view? Just because you can pick up a tool, it doesn't mean you know how to use it. Just because it's called a tool doesn't necessarily mean that it is one. If all you want is one hammer, being given 1,000 hammers at the same time doesn't help as much. If what you want to do is boil an egg, then a hammer isn't really the thing. In short, the present reality is the obvious survey of actors in the big data, deep learning, data science and AI technology spaces. Boys and girls in their element but out of their depths, running around throwing crap at everything and contributing noisily to the hype and hyperbole of it all. It's like watching a drunken cricket bat toting, acid dropping chimpanzee's tea party run amok in Lidl's. Now I'll address some promises for the future. What does the future offer? Probably more of the same, but more so. However, if I take an optimistic view, here are some areas where I think we might make some advances. Future option number 1. The development of tools for managing and deploying rule-based expertise into apps. Future option number 2. The development of tools for reducing the complexity of managing and maintaining rule bases that can be used, for example, in the automatic generation of rule-centric APIs. Future option number 3, using data governors with elements of AI to actually reduce the volume of streaming data as noise. Future option number 4, the evolution of tools for treating data as an asset, whether as a value-adding asset, an asset of no apparent value, or a liability. Future option number 5, using explainable AI to challenge and to potentially negate the predictions of data mining apps, thereby limiting the damage that such an app could inflict. Future option number 6, socializing expert system development and delivery. Would Microsoft like to embed an expert system shell in Excel, for example? I know someone who has done that. Future option number 7, we must insist that AI must either be explainable or fully controllable. Future option number 8, we should be preparing to introduce the concepts of AI governance and general AI protection regulation. Future option number 9, finally reducing the buzzword bingo bullshit and term abuse in IT, AI and data. That people take the time to learn what things actually mean and where things are really applicable or not. That people understand why using terms that they don't understand is a very bad idea. Now wouldn't that be nice? Of course, there is a lot more than that. But blogs being blogs and bozos being bozos. With such a subject, it is easy to become conflicted. At the back of my mind, I have the idea that deep learning is just God's way of telling companies that they have too much money and not enough sense. I also believe that a lot more work needs to be done in investigating feature extraction from data before we can even begin to consider it as a maturing technology. That said, the world of data and use of that data can be an exciting place. Maybe one day, not too far away, someone will come up with a useful AI or data technology that doesn't actually require too much hyping. So that's it, folks. Many thanks for listening. This is Martyn Jones at goodstrat.com, the Good Strategy Company. You can write to me at martyn.jones@martyn.es. Have a beautiful June 2019.